What's happening to my wife? It started with the little things. At first, I thought it was just the stress of our new home. Moving into the old Victorian house at the edge of town was supposed to be a fresh start for us, a place where we could build our future. But now I wonder if it was a mistake. One evening, as I sat on the couch flipping through the channels, I noticed that Emily was staring at the window. The curtains were drawn, yet her gaze was fixed as though she could see beyond the fabric. "Emily, are you okay?" I asked. She turned her head slowly, her face pale. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I listened carefully, but all I heard was the faint hum of the refrigerator. "Hear what?" I replied, trying to mask the unease in my voice. "Whispers," she said. Her voice trembled, and for a moment, I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone's whispering my name. I dismissed it as the stress of the move. "It's probably the wind, Emily. This old house makes all kinds of noises." She nodded reluctantly, but I could see the doubt lingering in her eyes. That night, she didn't sleep well. I woke up several times to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the door. When I asked what was wrong, she only shook her head and climbed back under the covers. The next few days, her behavior became stranger. She started avoiding certain parts of the house, particularly the basement. She'd flinch whenever I mentioned it, and when I asked why, she'd mutter something about a dark feeling down there. One afternoon, I came home early from work to find her sitting in the living room, rocking back and forth. She was clutching a necklace I'd never seen before, a small tarnished pendant in the shape of an eye. "Where did you get that?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her lips moved silently, as if reciting a prayer or a chant. When I tried to take the pendant from her, she screamed. It was a sound unlike anything I'd ever heard, raw, guttural, and filled with terror. I stumbled back, and she clutched the pendant tighter. That night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. At first, I thought Emily had gotten out of bed, but when I reached over, she was still lying next to me, her breathing shallow and erratic. The footsteps grew louder, pacing back and forth in the hallway. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out of the room, but the hallway was empty. When I returned to the bedroom, Emily was sitting upright, her eyes wide open. "They don't like the light," she whispered. "Who doesn't?" I asked, my voice shaking. She pointed to the corner of the room. The air felt heavy, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow shift where there shouldn't have been one. I turned on every light in the house and stayed up the rest of the night, watching Emily as she slept fitfully. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I found her in the basement, kneeling in the center of the room. She had drawn strange symbols on the floor with what looked like charcoal, and the tarnished pendant hung from her neck. Her eyes were closed, and she was muttering in a language I didn't recognize. "Emily!" I shouted. "What are you doing?" Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment, they weren't her eyes at all. They were black, endless voids that seemed to pull the light from the room. A voice that wasn't hers spoke low and menacing. "She belongs to us now." I rushed forward, shaking her shoulders. "Emily, snap out of it!" I yelled. She blinked and her eyes returned to normal. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "I can't stop it," she sobbed. "They're inside me." Desperate, I called a local historian who specialized in paranormal activity. When he came to the house, his face turned pale as he walked through the rooms. "This house, it's not just haunted," he said. "It's cursed." He explained that the previous owner had been a reclusive occultist who performed rituals in the basement, trying to summon entities from beyond. "Some doors, once opened, can never be closed," he warned. I begged him to help us. He agreed to perform a cleansing ritual, but as he began, Emily screamed and collapsed. Her body convulsed violently, and the pendant around her neck glowed with an unnatural light. The room grew icy, and shadows danced along the walls. The historian shouted incantations, his voice trembling. Emily's screams echoed, blending with guttural growls that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. And then, just as suddenly as it began, It stopped. Emily lay unconscious on the floor, the pendant shattered beside her. The historian looked exhausted, but he managed a weak smile. "It's over," he said. Emily woke up hours later, her memory of the past weeks a complete blur. The house felt lighter, the oppressive weight lifted. But sometimes late at night, I still hear faint whispers in the darkness. And when I do, I hold Emily close and pray that whatever was here is truly gone. I'm not sure it ever will be the second story. The strange skiers and the suspicious adventure. I've been skiing since I could walk. My parents were competitive skiers, and they made sure to teach us the sport as early as possible. This story took place when I was 21 years old and a senior in college. My friends, Jaden, Rylan, Amir, and I, decided to take a skiing trip to Vermont. I can't remember the exact name of the mountain, but it was massive, with 7 lifts covering all the peaks. We were excited and tried almost all the challenging slopes over the first day. On the second day, while discussing how we should end our trip at the top of a lift, 2 girls approached us. They weren't wearing helmets, which stood out, and one was brunette while the other was blonde. They were stunning, easily the most beautiful women I'd seen in person. They started talking to us, saying they were bored because most of the people on the mountain were older. We were intrigued, especially Amir and Rylan, who started flirting with them. At some point, one of the girls pulled out a small, unmarked bottle of alcohol and challenged us to drink it, claiming it was better than the Fireball whiskey we were carrying. Most of us took a sip, except Jaden and I, who were cautious. I pretended to drink because something about the whole situation felt off. The girls then asked if we had ever skied a trail called Devil's Forest, claiming it was a hidden gem on the mountain. Intrigued, Rylan and Amir eagerly agreed to follow them, while Jaden and I hesitated but decided to go along. The girls led us to a remote area far from the main slopes, where we had to remove our skis and walk uphill through fresh, untouched snow. Eventually, we reached a forested area, and the girls said we were close to the trail. When we stopped to rest, the girls pulled out the bottle again. Rylan and Amir took more drinks, but Jaden refused, which seemed to annoy one of the girls. I noticed neither of the girls drank anything the entire time, which made me even more suspicious. When we finally skied down the forested trail, it ended in a clearing with no lift in sight. Rylan and Amir started feeling dizzy and suddenly collapsed. Panicking, I rushed to them, while Jaden tried questioning the girls. They claimed not to know what was happening, but their reactions seemed off. Jaden then also fainted, leaving me alone with the 2 girls. I began feeling lightheaded and realized that whatever was in the drink was affecting everyone who had consumed it. The girls stopped pretending and whispered to each other, saying I hadn't drunk enough. They looked frustrated, then decided to leave, taking Amir and Rylan's skis with them. After regaining some strength, I stumbled after them, following their tracks in the snow. I eventually saw them meeting 4 men near a parked van. One of the men pointed at me, and I realized I was in danger. I quickly returned to my unconscious friends, shaking Jaden awake first. Together, we tried to wake Amir and Rylan, but had no luck for nearly an hour. When they finally came to, we explained what had happened. We were shaken, realizing how close we had come to something far worse. The incident haunted us, and we reported it to the mountain staff and local police, but nothing ever came of it. To this day, we don't know who those girls were or what their true intentions were, but I'm certain it wasn't just about stealing equipment. Something far darker was at play that day. Dark whispers. It began on a night when the wind howled through the empty streets like a grieving phantom. Mia sat in her tiny apartment, bathed in the pale glow of her laptop screen, editing the latest episode for her YouTube channel, Dark Whispers. Tonight's topic: urban legends that turn out to be true. But as she typed, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. The whispers started faintly. At first, Mia thought it was the wind seeping through the cracks in the old windows. But as she leaned closer, she realized they were words. Fragmented, disjointed phrases. Don't look, don't turn around. She froze, her hands hovering over the keyboard. A cold chill ran down her spine. The apartment was silent except for the whispers. She checked the door. It was locked. The windows were bolted shut, yet the whispers grew louder. Help me, he's coming. Mia grabbed her phone, intending to record the sounds, but as soon as she hit record, the whispers stopped. The sudden silence was almost more terrifying. She sat back, trying to rationalize what she had heard. Maybe she was overtired from editing too late. Shaking her head, she decided to distract herself by researching news stories for the channel. As she scrolled through forums, a post caught her attention. Has anyone else heard the dark whispers? Mia clicked on it, her pulse quickening. The thread was filled with chilling accounts from people who claimed to hear whispers coming from dark corners of their homes, often followed by strange events. Objects moving, lights flickering, and, in some cases, people vanishing. One comment stood out. If you hear the whispers, don't answer them. If you do, it's already too late. A sudden knock at the door made Mia jump. She glanced at the clock, 2:14 a.m. Who would be knocking at this hour? The knock came again, harder this time. Mia, a voice called. It was a woman's voice, low and strained. Her heart pounded. No one knew her well enough to come here in the middle of the night. Who is it? She called out, her voice shaking. Please let me in. He's following me. Mia's hand hovered over the doorknob. Her mind flashed back to the warning. Don't answer them. The woman outside began to cry, her sobs heartbreaking. Please, you have to help me. He'll kill me. Mia couldn't take it anymore. She swung open the door, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, the only sound the faint hum of the building's heater. Shaking, Mia shut the door and locked it. As she turned back toward her living room, her heart dropped. Her laptop screen had gone black, but words were being typed across it in jagged letters. You shouldn't have answered. The lights in her apartment flickered, then died. She grabbed her phone, switching on the flashlight, and scanned the room. Her breaths came in short gasps as she saw movement in the corner, a shadow darker than the rest of the room. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to melt into the darkness. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. You can't hide. You can't run. Mia screamed as the shadow moved closer, stretching long, clawed fingers toward her. She bolted for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. The last thing she saw before everything went black was her laptop screen flickering to life. A live video feed of her own terrified face appeared, with thousands of viewers already watching and commenting. What's behind her? And then there was silence. The abandoned house and the strange neighbor. My family owns a small vacation home in Colorado. My parents are avid skiers, and that was the reason behind buying the house. It has been in the family since before I was born and shows signs of aging. My father had to do a lot of maintenance work over the years, and now he's considering demolishing it to build something new. This story happened around 15 years ago when I was 8 and my brother was 11. We were in Colorado during a snowstorm. The snowfall was heavy, and my brother and I went out to play in the snow. The great thing about that place was the vast open spaces surrounding the house. There was a large forest and a dead-end road leading to other big properties. We loved playing games like hide and seek or snowball fights. We decided to play a snowball game with our custom rules. We built snow forts, and the goal was to steal a large snowball from the other's base and bring it back to our own. My brother Josh, chose his base on the neighboring property, which was usually empty. We started playing, and I waited for him to blow the whistle signaling the start of the game, but he was late. After 10 minutes, I decided to head to his base via the road since I was afraid of going through the forest during the storm. When I reached the neighboring property, I didn't find my brother. I saw his snow fort, but there was no sign of him. Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice calling from the house. "Are you looking for your brother?" It was an older woman standing at the door with a strange smile. She told me my brother wasn't there and invited me inside to warm up. I felt scared and yelled out my brother's name, but there was no response. I noticed footprints in the snow leading back toward the forest. I heard heavy footsteps inside the house, so I ran back to our house as fast as I could. When I got home, my father and Josh were already there, looking for me. My brother told me he experienced the same thing. A strange woman invited him into the neighbor's house. My father decided to check it out with a weapon in hand. He found the front door locked and no one answered. Later, he spoke to other neighbors and learned the house's owners were not there that weekend. The police were called, but the house was empty.